Hi. I was asked to go over one of my last videos that I named Vessel. One of my friends had an idea, which was to kind of make a making of video with the gear that I use and kind of the steps I go into to making that video or song / video. And so I thought I would give it a try. So what I think I'll go over is just my setup, which is the different instruments, and kind of give you like a background of what I did to make all the different parts and how I put it together. And I think we can just go through and look at everything. So it'd be a bit of a rough video because I don't normally do this, and I don't normally talk to a camera either. So we'll see how that goes. And what I'm using in this track, and I'll put a link for that video, is the gear that I use is a Spectralis 2 and the Access Virus TI Polar. Those are the only two physical instruments that I'm using. I do use an Eventide space pedal to listen to what the reverb will sound like through my mixer, and my mixer is a Soundcraft 22 MTK or MKT. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's a terrible mixer. I've had lots of problems with it, but it still works for me. I actually quite love my Spectralis and Virus, as you probably know if you watch any of my videos. So I do use those quite a bit, and I'll just probably kind of show you exactly what I'm doing. So we'll get right into it. So I've got two outputs here. The sum outputs, those go right into my mixer. And then I've got directs 1, 2, 3, and 4. Direct 1 and 2 actually goes into my Virus, and that's where the drums are heard. So I can actually turn these on, and it might take a minute. But what I do is I'm routing the drums from the Spectralis into the Virus, and then those get processed. And from there, they are sent out to output 2. I have my sum left and right. So if I go to my song, so on my Spectralis, I push song and click 4, and now it's going to go through and load everything. I believe my bass sound is going through that output. So I'm just going to solo that part, and I think you'll just hear the bass. And that's kind of what you can hear there. So that you could, manipulate any way you want. I didn't actually manipulate it in the song. And so that's just using its sequencer here. What's kind of cool, and I didn't really do it, is that you can change the how it plays back. So right now it's just going forward. It's just a 16-step pattern. So now I could have it kind of going in any sort of order. So I think when I started this song, I just had it going. I just had this bass part playing, and then I came up with the drums that went on to that. And the drums are sequenced and played through the Spectralis here. So we've got 2 drum parts, I think only a snare and a kick drum. So if we just listen to my the bass and the bass, not guitar, bass synth voice and the bass kick. Now, actually, what you're hearing is the processing through the Virus, so I'm going to actually turn that down. So those are the 2 parts you're hearing there. I'm not sure if I have the snare. I think so. So I can play that too. So I think this is what you'd hear in the beginning. Yeah. So that's kind of what you're hearing from the Spectralis. I think, there is a piano part, and that's what goes out of the outputs 3 and 4. And the reason I do that, so the sum and the direct 3 and 4 go directly to the mixer, and then 1 and 2 in this track is going to the virus. The reason I have the sum and the 3 and 4 going directly to the mixer, and especially separating them, is just so that I can add different effects to each part. And so that's what you can hear here. That's pretty basic. And then when I go to the second pattern, I have a cat that's really wanting to chat, so you might be able to hear her singing along to everything. So if I go to my second pattern, you'll start hearing things from my virus, and so I'll show you how things are connected there too. So I have the input right now. Those are coming from the Spectralis, and those are the drums being processed. So I actually think you'll see, because I have that part selected, you'll see these kind of light up as the drums come through. Not sure how well you can see that. And then I've got main outputs and then outputs 2 and 3. Or I'm sorry. It's actually, so output 1 and then output 2, which is left, right, left, right. Output 2 goes to a secondary mixer where I kind of feed all the drum sounds from my different sequencers and different kind of islands of setups. And output 1, that goes directly into the mixer then. The reason I do the drums all kind of into one separate mixer and then in is because I'm always using the drums from my different setups, and I just want to keep kind of one input or set of inputs into my mixer that go that are from the drums. So, like I said, I have the drums being processed from the Spectralis into the virus. And what I'm using the virus for, I actually have 3 different parts, and I'm using sequencer mode. There are 3 modes. There's single, multi, and sequencer mode. And in sequencer mode, the reason I use that is that, so single mode obviously only uses one part, so you couldn't do any of the other sounds that I'm doing here. I could only really process or do one thing. In multi mode, I think with this the Virus TI series, you can have 16 multi patches, which kind of have all 16 unique sounds. But I think after you get to a certain point, you actually are using the parts from the singles. So if you actually edit those parts, they end up changing. So if you were to use a patch in 2 different multis and you change something in the sound, it would affect that. So what I like to use is the sequencer mode, because usually in single mode, I will create a sound and I want to keep that sound. And if I manipulate it, I would save it as a different sound. And so sequencer mode just kind of, I use the Spectralis to select the right patch for each part. And that's just a lot easier for me to keep things straight. So you'll hear a few different sounds in this that come directly from the virus. So the first one was kind of like, I'll play it for you and I'll solo it. This is directly from the virus. And one thing that I like to do is use the arpeggiator from the Spectralis to sequence arpeggios from different gear. And that's what I'm using here. The virus is pretty good, but what I find is that if I push start on the Spectralis when the virus is using its own internal arpeggiator, I can get like, they don't sync up quite as well, so the sound might be delayed just a little bit on the virus, and that ends up bothering me so much. So I don't particularly like using arpeggiators outside of the gear or on the external gear if you know, I'm using a sequencer. It's nice to have the sequencer performing that function, which is kind of odd because I can't stand it when gear doesn't have its own arpeggiator. So that's kind of, you know, that's the second pattern. And as I go on, is what I'm typically doing is saving a pattern as like, I'm saving it to its location and then the next pattern, and then I end up manipulating that. And I think for this, if I go to the third pattern, yeah, here you start hearing the strings. I actually made a mistake when I recorded this song, and the strings ended up going to the same outputs as the drums. And I don't know how that happened, but I just hadn't paid attention when I was recording it. So I ended up getting them going to the wrong outputs. And I'm not sure how I'll fix that because I think it sounds okay, but maybe the drums are a bit loud and now I can't separate those sounds quite as well as I'd like. I could probably record the string kind of sounds again if I wanted to. So now everything, like I said, is being sequenced through the Spectralis. And so that's kind of what you can hear. Normally, there's two different ways to sequence. You can kind of use a step sequencer, or you can sequence by recording, by live playing. And I do kind of both of those throughout, so it just sort of depends. Yeah, here you can hear the piano coming from the Spectralis. So I think I'll try and mute everything but that. Yeah. And it should have its own reverb on it. I actually really... Oh, I can't. I'll have to turn the level down here. It would help if I was on the right part. Okay, so I'll turn the volume down on that. I actually really like the piano that came with the Spectralis. I think it's the original piano samples, and it just always fits my need or my needs. And so that is just kind of added on to all the different sounds. And then if we go to the next pattern, so that pattern has maybe more kind of like I'm not sure how to say it, but the drums are maybe a little more intense. That's what I was going for. And then if we go to the next pattern, I think that's where it quiets down. And in this song, at least, I created this is where I changed kind of the whole maybe not structure, but sound of the song. One thing that I notice I do a lot is that I end up making the song sound the way I want it to when it's halfway through. And I end up keeping the first half and then just going with it and letting the second half, which is the part I usually like a little more. So yeah, this is kind of, I think, the high point of this track. And the way I got a lot of the drums, the way I kind of made the drums sound more syncopated was using a lot of the delays. I think I turned them off for what I've been recording right now, but I can kind of show you what that would sound like. as I increase. And actually I can hear a lot of clicking because it sounds like it's doing too much stuff right now. It's one thing I find I do is overload the virus with a lot of sounds I'm using. So right now I'm only using 3 parts, but it's a bit complicated, all the things I have going into it. So sometimes I hear like clicking as I've kind of gone over the DSP power. At least I think that's what's happening. And so that's, I can kind of go through the different drum parts, but they're just, here, I'll turn off all the sounds except drums. And when I created these, I actually just used the groove edit, which is kind of like a XOX, I don't know how you say that, kind of sequencer style, like the TR series. So I'm just going, and usually it's like a 4 to 8 bar loop, and I just push where I want those notes to hit for the different instruments. So if I turn local off on this, you can hear the different sounds I have. Oh, apparently I didn't have any sound loaded there, and it's just like a sine wave. I must have skipped one. Sometimes I have like 2 different snares in there, just kind of adds to the sound. So that's how I kind of work through the drums. And then I sort of let the songs kind of slowly fade out, which is, muting different parts, but letting the things play that I like. So that's kind of just like an overview of the different parts that I used, what I did to create this song. It's hard to get into things like, the process I used, because like this is a process of like 3 months of me not writing anything I liked, and that kind of takes a lot out of me to create something like that. And so, it sounds like, it took me about 2 to 3 days to actually sit down and write this, but it also took months of me shifting gear in and out and figuring out what I wanted to use. This is kind of my staple, or my go-to for creating music, because I find it just easy to use. I also have a Scorp, I think that's how you say it, Scorp Pyramid. And I just find myself so confused when I'm going through and trying to figure out how to get to the next pattern, how to save things, save patterns and progress to new patterns. Those end up just frustrating me, and I don't get as much done. And so that's kind of what I like about my Spectralis, is that I just know it so well that I just kind of fall back and use it. The things I don't like about it, it's hard to very specifically pick which, to do the program control messages to other gear, especially if they have very strange, kind of, MSB and LSB settings, like the Prophet 10. The System 8, I think it uses LSB like 85, and that just gets weird. And I can do that kind of stuff with the Spectralis, like change the patches on those instruments, but that can be kind of complicated, and that's the one thing that can be difficult about it. But I just find it so much easier to use, to write, and make music with the Spectralis than anything else that I have. I've used the RS7000, the mono machines, which actually are really quite nice, the analog keys, which I also love, the Squirt Pyramid, the Squid. I think I forget who made that. But that thing's kind of convoluted too. So, I guess I just stick to what I know. That's the best way for me to write music. So if this was at all helpful, just let me know. I'd be curious if you think there's other things you'd like to know that I didn't show you in how I wrote one of these songs. Because I guess I did just go through how it's all connected and how it was sort of compiled rather than how it was composed. And that could be difficult for me because I don't really have a good background in music theory, so I can't really explain why I choose the notes that I choose and why I choose to sequence some things and then record other things using live playing, and why it was that I chose the chords that I chose. I don't understand that myself, honestly. So, but I'd be happy to try and do something like that. I've thought about kind of recording myself making music, but I find that to be challenging because it's so boring to do. And honestly, I don't have enough room on my cards to record all that. So anyway, yeah, let me know if this is helpful, what you'd like to see. I could do this again for other videos that I make if you think that might be helpful. Just leave a comment, let me know. Thanks.